You're listening to The Sauce, an investigative podcast by McDonald's, Studio Gizmodo, and Onion Labs. October 7th, 2017. For most of us, this was an unremarkable Saturday. You might not remember what you did that day or what the weather was like. But if you worked at McDonald's, it was likely a day you will never forget.
They didn't realize the power, I guess, this sauce had.
It was a PR nightmare.
A little bit weird. We got lines already at 4 in the morning.
I've spent hours upon hours researching and talking to people about what happened on October 7th, but not because of how good it was. No, this podcast is all about what happens when the best of intentions go wrong. I'm Catherine LeClaire, and this is The Sauce. For the past few weeks, I spent every day trying to figure out the answer to one question. How did a shortage of dipping sauce manage to make customers so upset that they rioted at McDonald's locations across the country? I've watched dozens of videos of the chaos. In one video, you can see a helicopter circling overhead as an angry mob below chants their demands for sauce. In another, a man leaps onto the counter, pulls his shirt up over his head while jumping up and down and yells, "Where's my sauce?" Picture it. McDonald's locations more packed than a subway at rush hour. Cop cars circling outside. This wasn't just any dipping sauce, though. This was McDonald's Szechuan sauce. And to understand the importance of this condiment, what happened on October 7th, and why McDonald's is now bringing back 20 million cups of sauce, we have to start at the beginning. All the way back in 1998.
In 1998, there was a kids' movie that came out, and this was sort of a promotion for that movie. It was basically a sauce for our Chicken McNuggets.
That's Mike Harris, or, as he's known to the McDonald's team, Chef Mike.
I think it was relatively popular. Then after, a certain amount of time, most people go back to their original favorites, your ranch, your barbecue sauce, so kind of fell off the menu from there.
He would go on to become one of the guys behind all the new foods that McDonald's puts on their menu today. When did you first learn about Szechuan sauce?
I first learned about it on April 1st when a TV show decided to name drop it. There was a little call out to this special sauce, and my phone exploded.
On April Fool's Day, 2017, a popular animated late-night TV show aired a surprise third season premiere. For people unfamiliar with the show, it might seem random and hard to follow. But, long story short, it all centers around the main character's obsession with obtaining McDonald's long-lost Szechuan sauce. So McDonald's had no role in getting that mentioned in the TV show?
Absolutely not. It was a surprise to everybody. It really came out of nowhere.
The mention caught McDonald's employees totally off guard.
So I went back to the office and what is going on here? I've never heard of this. And apparently it was. That's when I learned that in 98 we had it out. And that kind of, got me involved in this whole scenario.
I got a call from a colleague of mine, Paul Mattson. He heads social at McDonald's.
That's Jano Cabrera, the senior VP for corporate relations at McDonald's.
He said that a certain show had just very prominently mentioned McDonald's and Szechuan sauce. And I said, I know one out of two of those things.
So when Paul first calls you up and explains to you what's going on, do you understand what a big deal that is at the time?
No, not in any way, shape, or form. When Paul called and he mentioned, the show, I was just like, I don't know what you're talking about. It sounds great. You tell me why you're so excited.
To help you understand how big of a deal this was, you need to understand these fans. Their excitement was through the roof. And calling them passionate would be an understatement. I asked Chef Mike to describe what happened that day.
My phone exploded, not only from people who I knew who watched, who saw this program on TV, but just general random people I've never met in my life started messaging me on Facebook and Twitter and asking for this sauce I've never heard of back.
So when you see everybody tweeting at you to make this sauce, what do?
A McDonald's employee on social media commented to me that we should be able to bring these people their Szechuan sauce back. So all I did was reply with, "I'll see what I can do."
This was a tweet Chef Mike will probably never forget.
Internet media picked that up, and then I look on my phone and I get a retweet and a like and another retweet.
So then what happened?
I thought my phone exploded before, but now it was, "Chef at McDonald's says they're bringing it back," and all this stuff. And I instantly went to our PR legal marketing team, and I'm like, I don't know what I just did. I was just responding, and it seemed to be taken a little out of context.
It turns out that, according to reports online, one of the creators of the show is a huge fan of the sauce, and he ends up following and messaging Chef Mike on Twitter.
We ended up following each other, so we were able to talk directly, and it was, "This is awesome, this is crazy, can you give me sauce?"
This major development made its way to Paul Mattson, director of social media at McDonald's, who had an interesting reaction to Chef Mike's news.
It was at that time I happened to be walking down the stairs of my home. I have little kids, and so we always have some junk and toys on the stairs, but it was the combination of reading his text, not expecting that person to get involved at any level, and probably missing, some onesie or something on the stairs. I basically fell down the last third of my stairs and hit the floor. But I was kind of numb from the reaction, so, there was no pain involved, thankfully.
Now, what you need to understand is that even a corporation as big as McDonald's doesn't have a magical faucet of Szechuan sauce that they can just turn the knob on. They have to recreate this recipe from scratch. Can you explain the process you went through to make the sauce?
I was told that there's a deep, dark cabinet somewhere where there is a piece of paper that has a recipe on it. Because it was 1998, I don't even know if it was digitized yet. However, like I said, I've never tasted the sauce before. It being so old, there's probably a lot of people who haven't tasted it, so we had to find people who remembered it to make sure that it tastes the same. The hardest part for us was, yes, I've never tasted the sauce, but we really had to find the recipe itself that was used.
Were you nervous at all when you were going through this process that the new sauce that you were making wouldn't live up to the hype?
I'm definitely nervous. We always want to make sure we're doing exactly what guests want, what customers want. Like I said, we wanted to deliver 100% on their ask. If it was different, if it was wrong, if it's not what they were expecting, we know we would have some upset customers. So we absolutely had all of the best intentions on making this as exact as we could.
Of course, pro that he is, Chef Mike nails it. And McDonald's sends out a half-gallon bottle of Szechuan sauce to one of the show's creators. And he loves it. On top of that, McDonald's actually created 3 additional bottles of sauce and gave them away through a social media contest. This is David Wasman. He's a Szechuan sauce superfan who won one of those coveted bottles. I asked him if he had already tried the sauce in 1998, back when it first came out.
Oh my gosh, yes, I absolutely remember it from way back in 1998. I remembered how good this sauce was when I had first tried it many years ago and wanted a chance to actually have a taste again. Never thought that I'd be that lucky.
And where were you when you found out that you had won this 64-ounce bottle of Szechuan sauce?
So I was sitting in my home, surrounded by friends because we were hanging out watching TV, and all of a sudden I got a notification on my phone saying that I had a message on Twitter. And lo and behold, the actual McDonald's Corporation were the ones sending me that message, telling me that I was one of those 3 winners that night.
And what was your reaction to that? Were you like, I have to try this sauce right now?
Oh, so immediately upon receiving it, I went directly up to my local McDonald's and grabbed 20 McNuggets and took them home and tried it right there and then. I even recorded the whole experience.
And here it is. This is me unleashing the Szechuan sauce. Okay, let me smell it. Oh, it's so sweet smelling. See, there's the lid.
And then I just started really enjoying the taste. So initially you get the taste of the soy, and then it kind of leads into the sesame and then a lot of the other spices. It was just an amazing, incredible experience the first time I got the chance to try it.
For the record, this is a sponsored podcast, but the McDonald's Corporation did not write that description. Yeah, those are David's actual words about Szechuan sauce. Unlike David, one of the other contest winners put their bottle up on eBay. This, more than anything else, really underscores to me the cultural moment McDonald's was having. At this point, this one jug was the only available Szechuan sauce on the planet, and people went nuts. Thousands of dollars later, the bottle ends up in the hands of none other than EDM artist deadmau5. Can you walk me through the story of how you basically end up purchasing one of these 64-ounce bottles of sauce?
I found an opportunity where one guy put it up on eBay, and I just kept bidding on that. And then ended up getting in touch with the guy personally about it. And then he said, I've been getting all these bids, but I think a lot of them are like phony. And and I said, okay, I'll tell you what, you pull it down right now and I'll give you, X amount for it. And he agreed to that, so...
Do you mind saying how much you ended up paying?
It was like about $15,000.
Wow. When it arrived, did you immediately open it up and taste it, or how did you try it?
I figured I'd hang on to it for about a month, and then I had a show coming up in Toronto. So I decided, there's enough of this stuff to probably cater to 1,000 people, I'm sure, for at least a dunk or two. So I asked the promoter if he could, make a McDonald's run and go out and buy, a couple thousand nuggets. Share it with the whole crowd and stuff.
Had you ever heard of deadmau5 before?
From my perspective, I was like, who's deadmau5?
That's Hano again. At this point in the story, the amount of incredibly positive PR that McDonald's is receiving is insane. There is so much excitement around Szechuan sauce, and most people don't even know what it tastes like.
We didn't have a lot of time. We're not the menu department, right? This is the PR team and the social media team that were like, let's get some more sauce made. We had these new buttermilk crispy tenders coming out. We thought, how can we do a campaign that's tying into sauces and not have Szechuan sauce part of it?
And that's Molly McKenna, McDonald's director of PR. In 2017, Molly and her team did numerous in-store limited giveaways of new McDonald's products with great success. They began to consider whether they could and should do the same with Szechuan sauce. Here's her boss, Hano.
The idea didn't come from us. It came from the fans of the show who began to ask, hey, are you going to make some of that sauce? And in the corridors of McDonald's, that question began to take hold. And as we began to think about it, increasingly, the question that we asked ourselves back was, well, why not? People are excited about this. Maybe we should do this. And we did.
I asked Chef Mike to tell me a little bit about what needed to happen to make this sauce a part of the campaign.
So, since we're making a food item somebody is consuming, there's actually legal things we have to do, like the ingredient statement. We have to make sure the ingredients are on an ingredient statement like you'd see in the supermarket. How it's packaged, when it's made, making sure the ingredients are available. We have to do it in a sanitary, safe environment, working with our suppliers. We knew it was going to be shipped, so we had to make sure it was shipped without exploding all over the place.
The release was set for October 7th. And I want to be clear here that this was basically unprecedented for McDonald's. A release of this scale usually requires testing the product in smaller markets to assess the public demand. But most of the people on social media tweeting at Chef Mike about Szechuan sauce had never even tasted it. There's really no guarantee that anyone will actually care. When you think about it, this is kind of amazing. These fans basically managed to get the world's largest restaurant chain to materialize their demands. McDonald's was unearthing and reproducing a sauce that hadn't been made in 20 years. All because people just asked for it. Of course, you're not listening to this podcast because everything went okay. So, how do we get from the pinnacle of PR perfection to people rioting in the streets on the first Saturday of October? To figure that out, I'd need to dig deeper. And dig, I did. Coming up on The Sauce.
Lines start growing, very long lines, unanticipated lines.
Right away, we see this giant sign on the door. Of course, it's saying that they didn't receive the Szechuan sauce. And it was like, no way.
It was one of the worst days of my career.
You've been listening to The Sauce, an investigative podcast by McDonald's, Studio at Gizmodo, and Onion Labs.